let's hear from some more members of the audience. The man in the blue shirt there, and then I'll come over to you. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Jermaine was talking about facts, and obviously John sat there as a Labour representative. If you look at Stuart Rose yesterday and what he told to the Treasury Select Committee, where he confirmed that the Bank of England report that stated how immigration had impacted on the low and semi-skilled workers. That's 6 million workers in this country that have been affected by immigration, that have got a reduced standard of living. Yeah. How can a Labour representative sit there and say you're going to vote to stay in when it's having such a dramatic effect on so many people, 6 million people in this country?
But what do you think, what do you think of what Lord Rose in effect said, therefore, was that if you vote to leave the EU, wages will go up for 6 million people? Do you think he meant to say that?
Yes, because as
he clarified his comments, yeah.
He explained, you know, it's supply and demand. I mean, for years now, the left has been saying the same thing. You know, immigration is good, it creates jobs. Yes, it does, that much is true, but the wage compression effect is massive. Okay. So it makes you wonder then, for like Stuart Rose and all of the people writing these letters from the footsie, what do they really care about? Do they care about the wages of British people, or do they care about profits that can be made for these big multinational companies?
All right, I'll go over to you up there. Behind you, the man behind you, and then I will come to you.
I think there is a lot of confusing facts out there at the minute, but I think what's definitely clear is, especially the Eurozone's failed, isn't it time to get hold of our currency and also get control of our economy before we press forward into the world? Just get Britain sorted first.
You're a Brexiter.
I am.
And the woman in front of you?
I'm a Brexiter as well, and if you look at what's happened with the refugee crisis over the last 6 months, how am I supposed to believe in a Europe when all the countries are squabbling about what to do with the refugee crisis? They can't decide what's best for Europe, so how are they going to decide what's best for us, and how am I supposed to think it's good to stay in?
We've got a question about that, which I'll take in just a moment. Let's just hear from you, sir, over there, and you in the front. I'll take you at the front in the second row first, and then you behind.
I am very much divided over this issue, but I'm very confused about Labour's position. I was watching Prime Minister's questions yesterday, and as far as I'm concerned, it looks like Jeremy Corbyn and the whole of the front bench just want this issue to go away because it's not on their agenda.
John Mcdonnell, what do you say to that? And let me just add to that what the leader of the Green Party said today, that she was concerned by the relative silence from the Labour leadership on the referendum. Okay, why is this?
Well, it's not silence, and to be frank, the focus of the debate seems to have been the divisions within the Conservative Party so far. And I think now's the time, you're right, now's the time for Labour itself. And Alan Johnson's been doing various meetings around the country expressing our policy, but I think you're right, now's the time for us to actually come out a bit more in terms of explaining our views. And the view is that we want to transform Europe. We don't want the EU as it now is. We have our own reform agenda, and it is about protecting wages. It's making sure we enforce trade union rights. And the benefits that we've had so far is actually our campaigns in Europe have actually developed issues around paternity leave, maternity leave, some protection for workers themselves, which this government is trying to undermine. So we've used Europe as the vehicle to protect that.
But why haven't you been campaigning on this? I mean, 3 weeks have gone past already.
Well, we are.
Did you decide not to and let the Tories fight each other, or what?
Enjoyable though that has been at times, but no, not at all.
Are you saying Jeremy Corbyn and you are both going to come out fighting?
Well, we've been out there, but I think we've been crowded out of the media because of what's happened in the Tory party. But we will be out there on the stump arguing for our case. But our case is not, look, we've got Europhiles and Europhobes. You know, those who accept everything that's about Europe that is good, those who detest Europe. Our position is a rational one, which is we believe it's in the best interest to remain within the EU, but there are real issues that have to be addressed. And we've got to, let me just finish, we've got to develop a reform agenda, and that is about protecting wages, it is about developing trade union rights, it is about long-term investment, it is about having, and exactly as Zoe said, a real vision for the future, one of hope.
Well, all right.
Let me just say that agenda is being developed right the way across Europe with other socialist and social democratic parties.
We've got the point twice now. Dominic Raab, do you want to comment on what John Mcdonnell said?
Well, I think the truth is, in fairness, there are different views within the Labour Party, and that's perfectly respectable. We're not clones in the Tory Party, we're not clones in the Labour Party. And Frank Field, who's one of the most respected, I think, Labour figures, has talked very much about the social impact of immigration, and that's been the key reason the lack of border controls, why he's come out for Brexit. I wondered if I may briefly pick up on the point the gentleman made about businesses and Lord Rose's comments. The key thing about the EU is we get huge amounts of red tape, but the big businesses with the big HR departments and the lawyers are much better placed to deal with it. The Commission's own advisory group say that their red tape hits small businesses 10 times harder than big businesses. Well, up here in the northwest, 99% of the firms are small businesses, and 2/3 of the employment is through small businesses. So do you want to stick up for the big corporations in hock with the EU, or do you want to stand up for the little guy, which is the worker and the small businesses?
Are we throwing light on this issue? What? You're shaking your heads. The man up there. You, sir, with the glasses, yes.
Yeah, I think we're skirting around a major issue here, which is democracy. British democracy is a beacon around the world, and the European Union is inherently undemocratic the way it works. And this is the last chance we're going to get to vote on this for a long, long time. I think it's really important that people realise that democracy is at the heart of the election here.
Okay, and the woman here in the second row.
Well, John Mcdonnell keeps talking about the reform agenda, and isn't the whole point that attempts at reform, where is your potency to have reform within the current EU system?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave that as a question, and the man behind with the...
So it's on a similar theme. How long would you allow for this reform agenda? You know, if you're going to allow one,
well, if you vote to stay in, how long would you allow?
How long would you allow? Yes.
Sorry. Well, look, I've got a massive problem with this democratic thing. There is a democratic deficit in Europe, for sure. Nobody would say it was perfect. Nobody does say it's perfect, except for the In campaign, which I think is making a mistake. But when you say it's a democratic deficit, you've got to look at something like the environment. The European Union, over the past 20 years, has acted almost as an environmental union. Everybody said, we want this for the environment, we want clean beaches, we want clean air, and Europe brought that into play, and they did it with very, very slow laws, which are very, very difficult to unpick. If you compare that to the way British governments work, a government will say, we'll be hugging a husky, no, hang on a sec, a hoodie, no, a husky, 1 week, and then come in, suddenly the renewables programme is pulled back, suddenly renewables are back on the table, suddenly their commitments are this, suddenly their commitments are not this. You know, you see a huge amount of tergiversation with national governments, which bears no relation to the things that we've democratically asked for. So the idea that just by being kind of outside Europe we'll get the democracy that we deserve, I think is wrong.
Okay, I'm going to move on, because each week we do quite a substantial chunk on this, but I want to pick up the question that a woman up there put, and Catherine Boots here has it. Catherine.
Has the migrant crisis been mishandled by the European countries?
Has the migrant crisis been mishandled? Louise Bours.
Absolutely. We had at the beginning of it, obviously I'm sure all of you remember Angela Merkel basically saying, everyone come, the doors are open. And then today, or yesterday, today I think it was, we had Donald Tusk, who is the president of the European Council, saying, don't come, it's closed, you cannot come. So we've had this huge open arm invitation, and now we have this huge stop, don't come, you're not wanted. Of course it's been mishandled. It was so silly to say what she did initially, not knowing how many would come, not knowing how they would come, and also not taking into consideration at all the terrorist threat that exists at the moment in those countries. And we have to all, you know, we have to admit that when these migrants are coming, I mean, the European Union figures themselves are saying now that roughly 5,000 jihadists have already made their way onto the continent with the migrant/refugees.
You said more than that, didn't you? You said the cultures that people came are wrong, and you blamed those attacks in Cologne on the people who'd been allowed in, and said that was very foolish. That wasn't. You weren't talking about jihadists.
Look, we have to. No, absolutely. We have to accept that the people who are coming are culturally different from us. Sometimes that's a great thing, and cultures can integrate, and we all live very happily. What Cologne showed to us was that these huge numbers of young males, you know, obviously who see women as very, very differently to Western men, how they see women. And unfortunately, those mass sexual assaults didn't just happen in Cologne, they happened in Helsinki and across Europe. And they were organised And that is a very frightening thing for people in this country, because if you then have, in Germany, signs being put up in swimming pools and public buildings for women saying what you can do, what you can't do, you mustn't smile, you mustn't wear your bikini.
I think we've got the point.
Wrong.
I'm sorry to stop you. There's so
wrong.
many people around this table. I have to bring them all in. Jermaine, what's your view of that?
Look, I mean, I think the road that Angela Merkel went down was pretty ridiculous, to be honest with you, and it caused, well, it could cause chaos, to be honest with you. I think I spoke about facts when I spoke about the EU and whether to stay in or whether to leave. I wanted some type of facts. The way they've handled this situation is something that probably takes me away from that, because I think it's been completely mishandled. It doesn't give me any confidence, so to speak, within the EU. You know, I would like to probably see more of a pro rata type basis and handling of the situation, look at each country's economic value, basically, how much land they've actually got, and deal with the situation like that. I don't think, it's definitely not something that we can turn our backs on. It's there, and we need to deal with it in that type of way, I feel.
Dominic Raab.
That's the key to it. We've got to have an immigration system that people have confidence in. And the truth is, and put the asylum seekers, the genuine refugees, those fleeing persecution to one side for a moment.
Well, that was what her question is about.
They're relatively...
Let's stick with her question,
Okay,
though.
but they're a relatively small proportion, and we should certainly treat them humanely and make sure that we offer them safe haven. But
1.5 million,
sorry,
is that relatively small?
David, sorry.
No, is that small?
The vast majority are coming through Calais and through those routes from Syria, through the Mediterranean. Whether we call them refugees or not, they're coming actually for a better life. They're what we, in that rather unsavoury phrase, call economic migrants. And the truth is, we need to do three things to restore trust in our immigration system. One, make sure that people come here can be self-sufficient. Secondly, make sure if they break the law, they can be removed from this country. And three, have some control over the raw numbers because of the pressures on wages, as has already been mentioned, because of the pressures on public services. We cannot do any of those three things from within the EU. And that's why I wish we could, but we can't. If you want to restore public confidence in our border controls, you have to leave the European Union.
And go back to the questioner, Catherine.
May I interrupt? All the heads of government have put millions of pounds for the migrants, yes, to help them. Where's the help? There's thousands of them at the border, young children. There should be people sent out there with the millions you're sending out there for nurses, builders. Then tents are no use. You're putting children in tents in the middle of winter. The time we've been in this situation since last year, nothing's been done. You've got a few tents and a few toilets, 42 toilets in one camp for 8,000 people. How is that good for the migrants? Put some money where it's seen. I can't see any money going out there.
Zoe Williams.
I'm surprised to hear Dominic say that these are economic migrants rather than refugees, because we know there's a war in Syria. We know there are violent situations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Central African Republic, Eritrea. We know where the refugees are coming from, and we know what they're fleeing. So the idea that most of them are economic migrants is patently untrue.
Well, so you don't know that.
Well, yes, I do know that. I actually do know that.
You don't.
Yeah, I do.
It would be impossible for you to know that. But look, some of them are fleeing persecution.
Can I just tell you that nobody puts their children on a black dinghy across that strait if it's not safer on the boat than it is on the land. I've been in Lesbos. I've seen these people come in. 850,000 people came through Lesbos last year. It's an awe-inspiringly dangerous journey and a very expensive one, funneling money right back into the smugglers.
And we'll get more of those tragic cases if we don't deal with the problem in the region at all. And we're putting more money than any other European country to try and do that. But if you just open your borders, which is John's position, you'll find that the problem gets worse, not better.
And remember, they are leaving a safe country. Why do they put them in the boat?
I know.
Why don't they put them in the boat from Turkey? Turkey is a safe country.
All right, finish,
why
Zoe,
take
and then
that
I'll
risk?
get... One at a time, please, not two at a time.
The point is, OK, it's fine. Go and solve the problem at source if you think you can. can. But in the meantime, we're signatories to the Refugee Convention. When people are fleeing for their lives, they don't listen to Merkel or Tusk particularly, they flee danger. And we've got duties as human beings to care for them. Now, you might have a long-term plan to deal with Syria, but until you make it work...
The EU system says you go to your first port of entry, and then you have an allocation of...
Well, Donald Tusk is now saying, do not come to Europe, do not believe the smugglers, do not risk your lives and your money, it's all for nothing.